Okay, everyone. So the first things that I like to do now that I work with a lot of wet media and I include acrylic paint more often than not into my spreads is that I like to choose colors and paint a backdrop. I don't always do this. It depends on the amount of time that I have available, but I find that, it's just one more layer that we're adding. So I have colors that I usually gravitate towards, and they're going to be different colors than you. That is totally fine. So if you are feeling like you want to get really technical, you can Google different color associations. I know there's like psychologically, there's different ways to associate colors, and there's also ways like in magic, there is like a different chart that you can find that will give you the magical associations of different colors. I think that that's great, and if that's how you want to do it, that's totally fine. I personally have chosen not to work that way because I find that it's not as personal as I would like it to be. So the first thing that I do is I think of what I would like to journal. So the first spread I'm going to do is one that is going to help build boundaries in my life. That is the intention that I'm putting out there. I want to make sure that I'm not afraid to stand up for myself and say no when something is not speaking to me, when something is not going to serve my higher purpose and my higher good. And also if something is going to be like detrimental to my family, or if it's not going to serve me or my family, sometimes I need to set a boundary. And that is totally okay. So the first color I am going to add is this fun green color. This is light olive green from the Basics Acrylic Liquitex. I have a lot of different paints because I've just been experimenting, and this cap is broken because I use it a lot. But I am choosing green first because it is my safe color. The idea behind this being that the more safe I feel in my body and in my space, the more willing I will be to stand my ground and stand firm and say no when I feel that I need to. And so the first step for me is adding a color that really resonates with me and gives me that permission to do what I need to do. The next color I am going to choose is black. Black, if you look up magical color associations, black is specifically associated with protection. And I am choosing black because it is protective. It also is always a color that makes me think of like hiding. It almost like it's a barrier color in my brain almost. So that is one thing that I like to do, is including black in these spreads that really are meant to keep people out or to help me stand firm in something. Excuse me. The next color I'm including is this antique white. And I'm including this simply because, well, number one, I don't want the black to be too overpowering because I do think that boundaries take some nuance. I don't think it's something that's like a hard and fast rule that you always say no to everything and you never compromise, you never give. I think it's just a lot of every situation is different. And so we need to remember nuance. I also want to remind myself that more often than not, when I'm setting a boundary, it is something that I am doing out of love. It is out of love for me and my family and my kids. It is also out of love for the person who may be trying to cross a boundary. And that it is, even though they are doing that, and even though, maybe they're not respecting what I'm doing, I am setting that boundary and holding firm because I also love and care about them. And I want to make sure that I keep our relationship together, and keeping good boundaries is a part of that work. You know, somebody who regularly crosses boundaries, that's not someone that you're going to have a positive relationship with, and eventually you might see that relationship come to an end because they aren't being respectful. But you also need to make sure that you're standing your ground. So I'm using a palette knife. I just have these like really inexpensive ones. They're the plastic ones. I think I got them at Walmart. I don't like to endorse Walmart, but I live in the middle of nowhere, so I buy what I have to buy when I'm able to find it. And I think that I know people have used like old gift cards for paint scraping. You don't have to do the scraping. You can paint or add to this layer any way you want. But the way that I like to journal is I like to add a lot of collage on top. So I usually just add a layer of paint because that is what feels good. And so I really want you to follow your intuition. You can follow the steps that I'm doing. If you want to try that out first, that is totally fine. But this is my first step. More often than not is adding this. And I do try to add that extra intention by choosing my colors wisely, by choosing them in a way that makes sense for what I am wanting to accomplish with my intention. Okay, so this has mostly dried. It's dried enough that I'm able to work on it. You'll find, especially if you're like doing the paint scraping, it dries a lot faster. If you're working in the composition notebook, it holds this wet media really well. Makes it very easy if you are like me and you'd like to do a whole spread at a time. It makes it easy to do so. So the next step is I like to do some collage, and I use a combination of like found materials, the cut and collage books, as well as like my own painted papers or painted papers that I've gotten from other people's shops. One thing I like about using my own painted papers is that is just adding more energy to what I'm creating, because previously I have already created something that I'm going to then use here. So it's even more of my time and energy that is getting put into this specific spread. So I have some pieces pulled that I am going to include. The circle is, so the circle has some like a darker protective colors, or at least how I view them in it. It is like a mixed media collage piece that I then cut up, and I cut a circle out because a circle just reminds me of staying whole. We set up our boundaries because we want to take care of ourselves. It's about self-preservation. It is about self-care and self-love. And it is also about taking care of the relationships that are important to us. I am a stay-at-home mom. So, you know, my kids are what come first before everything else. And so that is one of the things that I like to include. Is like circles. If you've been seeing that a lot in my work, like on Instagram, circles are something that I include because it reminds me of being whole, that family unit, being together. It's just been coming up a lot for me in my work. Another thing that you can use is stickers. I chose a sticker because I've actually been at a loss for how to use this specific girl sticker, because it doesn't really resonate with me. And I think I figured out that it's because of like the attitude to it. Like it's the attitude of like, you're not going to tell me what to do. You need to respect me. You can kind of tell by her face. So I am using this because that is kind of like the energy that I want to put out, like that people cannot walk all over me. People cannot push my boundaries and expect me just to take it. I have to remind myself that no one else is going to stick up for me. I need to do it myself. So kind of adding this to remind myself to be fierce. I have another piece here. This is from a cutout I did. And it was a mixed media, like a messy mixed media piece I did on a day that I was really anxious, and I was hyper focusing on these super colorful crayon pieces. And so I had cut a piece out, or I ripped a piece out of this watercolor paper. So it gives it this nice like boundary that I thought would make a really good frame to kind of represent what we're working on today. It also has a lot of elements in it that are personal to me. If anybody grew up in the 90s, if you remember making these specific S's, clouds are really big for me. I've been working on my relationship to the color blue. It includes the color blue a lot. There's a lot of pink, which represents a lot of self-love for me and like love for what's important in my life. So again, you know, even though I wasn't necessarily making this mixed media piece with the intention of using it in this specific journal spread, I did include a lot of elements that were important to me because I made it and I chose the elements and the colors. And now I'm using it again. It just adds more of my own energy and time and attention to this. And so I kind of like how this looks here. I want to add, I have Posca markers. You can also use Sharpies or, you know, again, whatever it is that you want to use. But I want to add like some further protection here. It just makes me filling in this space, just kind of like sending that energy out of like, you know, respect me, listen to what I'm telling you, things like that. So then moving on, I wanted to include, this one's a little bit funny, but I wanted to include like a guardian animal. I don't have a cat, but I love cats. And I've always found that cats have, again, they have that attitude of like, you know, you can come pet me when I want you to, and you're not going to do anything. You're not going to pet me or hold me if I don't want you to. You know, cats kind of are the like quintessential guardian animal. It would be them and dogs for a little bit different of a reason. But like she has the same attitude as this cat, in my opinion, that like, you know, you can't mess with me. I have, these are some pieces that I have already cut out from like a cut and collage book. Just a note that I use those books often for personal work, but I don't use them a lot for like the artwork that I might sell. Because if you are a collage artist, you may know that like there's like copyrights that you have to consider, but usually if you use something for personal work, that's fine. And obviously I'm not a lawyer, so that's not like legal advice. I'm just telling you why you don't see these images a lot in like work that I would sell in my Etsy shop. Another thing is like I sometimes take more time cutting something out, but I have a lot, personally, I have a lot of chronic pain in my hands. So if I'm working in my journal, you know, sometimes I won't be super precious about what I'm cutting out. that's just another level of self-care, in my opinion. Just adding this because like we are the queen, or we are in charge of what we do with our day-to-day life. Our life is the result of decisions that we make every day. So I'm making the decision that I want to be more intentional with my boundaries, and I am taking steps to make sure that that happens. There was another piece I wanted to add. So this is from another cut and collage book, and this one will be a little bit funny, in my opinion, because it's just kind of like that, here we go again kind of attitude. Just reminding myself that like I'm talking specifically about boundaries because that's what I'm journaling about. But if you are like me and you're someone who's like a people pleaser, you've probably experienced that people just keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. And so boundaries are something that you will probably have to like revisit over and over and over again. That is okay. We have to make space for that. But this kind of makes me laugh. So I'm including that. It's all your own interpretation. So I think that whatever you want to include is perfect, you know? I have these stamps from Kitten Chops Illustrations. I absolutely love their work. I actually want to get one of their tarot decks eventually. Maybe for my birthday. We'll see. I've been like on a hiatus from buying tarot decks, but it's really difficult because everybody comes out with just fabulous ones. So obviously my favorite color ink, and like the ink that I use the most, is green. That is not an option here because I have already painted my background green. So I'm using an old security envelope from a bank statement. Banks remind me of security a lot also. So there you go. Extra intention. You can get creative with it, however creative if you want. I think I'm going to try to do it on this background, but if I don't like it, I can always do it on the other background. If you guys haven't noticed, green is my favorite color. I don't use stamps as much as I used to because I'm not super precise all the time. And so I have a hard time getting them to turn out like 100%. That is one thing that one like goal that I have for myself is to practice more patience when it comes to these like more precise things. And it's all about putting in time, right? So I stamped it that way. I don't really care for that because you can't really see. The stamp is kind of, I think from the Kitten Chops Illustrations, they have a specific tarot deck. I think it's the first one they made. And I think this is the Magician. And the Magician is a card that makes me think of like manifesting what it is that we want, holding firm in our desires and holding firm in our boundaries. Makes me think of protection magic. Okay, well that turned out pretty good. So I'm just gonna the other thing I try to be intentional with, especially since I do a lot of abstract collaging, is that I try to save like every scrap that I can, and use it where I am able to. Oh, here we go. I've had these stickers, I think since like 2017 that I have been trying to use, so perfect time, right? Cactuses remind me, cactuses, those remind me of protection, and setting boundaries like so much. I'm just looking in my stickers right now to see if there's anything else that I have that really resonates with what I'm working on. Like I said, it can be as abstract as you want it to be, and it only has to make sense to you. You know, it doesn't have to be something that makes sense to everyone else, and you don't have to tell people what the intention is behind it even. There's a lot of things that I journal about and then I share the spread on my Instagram, and you guys probably, if you're viewing it, you may not know exactly what it is that I'm working on, right? So I'm going to, I think, find something. Here we go. Here is another like mixed media piece that will add, it's got dark colors to it, which is surprising. I don't work in dark colors a lot. You guys probably notice I work in a lot of like neon and bright colors. I do a lot of inner child journaling. And so that comes up, you know, those fun colors come up. I grew up in the 90s. I was a kid that really, my favorite color was lime green as a kid. So that comes up a lot for me. But somehow I'm decided to work on protection today for this video. I somehow have all of these pieces like right around. Gonna add, I bought these. I did my first bullet journaling back in 2017. Off and on, and my stuff got buried. Which I shared this in a Patreon video because I actually did a flip through of that bullet journal for patrons at the time, and I guess I could make it public now and like share it with everybody as like a little fun look at how far we come, because it is not my best journaling, but I think that, you know, it started me on this path. So, and, you know, honoring our beginnings. But I'm putting a lot of cactuses in here because, like, number one, I don't know how else I'm going to use these stickers. You know, I live in the Midwest. They're not very, I like to use a lot of stuff that, like, is representative for me. I don't resonate with cacti a lot. But also just because, you know, protection, that's what that makes me think of is, you know, no one's going to mess with a cactus because it hurts, right? They're all prickly and they've got spikes all over them telling people like, hey, don't mess with me. I'm going to try something. The other thing I want you guys to remember is that your journal is a place for you to experiment. And it is also, especially if you use like a composition notebook or even like a spiral notebook, like you don't have to be precious about it. You can experiment. That's what art journaling is all about. I am going to do some green stamping over green paint. And if it turns out, it turns out. And if it doesn't, oh well. I think one of the more freeing aspects of my journaling practice is that I've literally always had like a, well, whatever happens, happens kind of attitude. And it has helped me a lot, especially when confronting my inner critic. It's probably working against my inner critic and having to deal with like negative inner commentary is probably one of the bigger issues I've had to deal with as a creator. And I know a lot of other folks probably resonate with that. That being said, I am including this because it is a stamp. It's kind of like divine. It's called Divine Vine. It is a stamp that was gifted to me. But I was thinking of like Dionysus. I was listening to the Emerald podcast recently. They were talking about Dionysus and how people could tell that he was coming because like vines and ivy would start to grow and crawl. And I just think of like, we have these vines in our backyard that are kind of like encasing our fence, even though we've been trying to manage it. So it just makes me think of like boundaries, closing off, protection, because of my personal association with it, because I listened to that podcast and because I have vines growing and taking over my fence in the backyard. That's how personal and abstract we can make it when we're choosing things to put in our journal. Another book that I don't use like nearly as often as I would like to. These at one point were for sale at Target. And I think there's 3 or 4 different editions of them. So you can definitely keep your eye out for different sticker books and stuff. I know that stuff that has, it has become more popular over the past couple years. A lot of stuff has since the pandemic. Okay, so this bug just like looks scary, so I'm gonna put that in there. Like, look at those pincers, right? But sometimes if I feel like I want to add more elements and I don't have anything like right away on hand. Ooh, a snake. There you go. Like, this is stuff in like my journaling that I share a lot on Instagram. That is like something I would never put in a spread, is a snake. But, you know, for me right now, the snake makes sense because it just reminds me of like another layer of protection. Like, if you think of those movies, like The Mummy or Indiana Jones, where they're like in a temple or in like an ancient place, and there's like booby traps and it's like a snake pit or something like that. I don't know. Maybe that's a stretch, but it makes sense to me. And that is really all that matters. This is not a book that I use all of the time because there's a lot of stickers in here that I just don't resonate with. So I can't imagine that I would ever use all of them. But like I said, it's actually like a good place to come if I have space in a journal spread and I want to add some more intention to it. Like here, I'm going to include like, so I had a cat over here as like a guardian animal. And then I included a snake and a bug just because like they looked scary and they made me think of protection. I think this is a wolf or a coyote. But it just reminds me of like, we're all animals and it's okay to be territorial. It's okay to be territorial with your time and with your energy because it is for you. You're here, you're an animal, you're living your life, and you don't have to explain yourself And the choice, like if you choose not to do something, if you choose not to spend your time a certain way, you don't have to explain that to somebody. You don't owe them anything. So I'm pretty happy so far with how this is turning out. I am going to now I like to add some words. I chose white just because of like I want it to actually be able to be read. Stand firm. And I'm actually going to go over it in black because I don't like how it looks. One of my personal symbols is for my name, which is the sign off you guys maybe see in my work a lot, which is star moth. Just a little scribbled star and moth. So I like to add that to my pages because this is something that's like associated with me. And then kind of as like a bonus, I am going to this spot right here. I'm going to do a little protection sigil. If that's not something that you're interested in, you can skip that video. I'm going to record it separately so that you guys don't have to watch it. But if you are somebody who enjoys like adding that extra magic to it, that is something that you can tune into. Okay, so I have added the sigil symbol that I designed in the last video. I drew some lines here because I mentioned in the other video, I like to do lines or dots in groups of 3 because 3 is a significant number in my journey. What I like to do actually is do like lines or dots in groups of 3, and then I do 3 groups. I've actually got 1, 2, 3. That's just something, that's a personal preference that doesn't, you know, you don't have to have all of the meanings and associations that I have because, you know, maybe this isn't a practice that you've been creating for as long as I have. Maybe you're not somebody who has a lot of personal symbology already set up, and that's okay. Really, it just has to do with your own personal journey and the things that you've been through and what makes sense for you. So this is it. This is my finished boundary spread. And I actually feel like now that it's complete, I feel like it is something that I would share on my feed on Instagram, but I'm not going to because this one's personal. I'm sharing it with you guys. But it just goes to show, like, even though it's a bunch of stuff that I would not have usually chosen because, you know, the colors aren't necessarily, like the black is not a color that I always use a lot of because, you know, I usually choose brighter colors, or like this image is not something I would normally work with. They work in this spread because of the associations that I made with them, and that adds energy and intention to the boundaries that I am working to hold strong in. So we're going to do one more spread for this class, and so I will see you guys in the next video.